Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Life should be scripted. And on that note, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. This is the first episode of Geeky Gentlemen Holiday Month 2017. I am your host at Part 2. Joining me today is my jolly good friend Rosco, and joining us for his first episode of Holiday Month, even though we do Holiday Month because of Steve's insistence, is Steve Baxey.
I'm alright with this. I'm alright on insisting and then never taking part in it.
Yeah, that's the best kind of insistence, isn't it?
Because it doesn't hurt me anymore. It just hurts everyone else.
Yeah. So Rosco picked our first discussion topic for Holiday Month. Rosco, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about whether or not you should tell your kids that Santa Claus is real.
Okay, and I feel like we all have a great opinion on this since we are all fathers. Oh, wait.
Yeah. I mean, you're closer than any of us are, so...
Yeah. This is when I start to feel old in the group. I need to feel hip. I need some of that millennial blood injection.
I can sell you my blood. It's a millennial thing to do now.
It is a millennial thing to do. Oh.
It's dystopian shit.
Oh my. Anyway, yeah, so we're whether or not it is ethical to tell children about Santa Claus. And I don't know, I feel like this is one of those things where your opinion on it will probably change rapidly the second you have kids. Because I feel like the point that we're all going to make to one degree or another, and I don't really have an argument against, is, yeah, it's kind of messed up to lie to children. But I feel like once you become a parent, you're just like, oh yeah, you gotta lie to them. They're frickin' idiots. And nothing's ever going to satisfy them. So you just have to lie sometimes to make things easier on yourself.
I don't have a problem with that, at least in principle.
Yeah?
But I'm not there yet, so I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so the annoying thing when it comes to talking about Santa Claus for me is I never believed in Santa Claus, ever.
Mm.
When I was a kid, Santa Claus seemed like the thing everyone agreed on. When, like, all my friends in elementary school and below were all like, Santa Claus is real. And I felt like a freak for thinking, no, he's not. What are you on?
Yeah, I had a similar thing, but mine was a little bit different. So I knew Santa Claus was not real, but I was like in denial about it, even to people that like didn't think he was real as well. Like my friend was like, yeah, Santa Claus is not real, and I'm like, I know on the inside, but I'm like, I can't say that. It was really weird. It's a whole complex.
Oh, that's too funny.
Santa's an annoying thing where, like, even if you know he's not real, when everyone else thinks he is, there's like almost like a weird groupthink effect where we're all having fun talking about Santa Claus, and you don't want to not be part of that.
Yeah.
At least as a kid. When you grow up, who the fuck cares? But
I don't know. What my favorite thing to do is whenever people start talking about like kids and when they as kids stop believing in Santa, my go-to bit is to go, wait, what? Santa's not real? And I love that. That joke never gets old to me. Because everybody gives me that same look for about 2 seconds, and then they remember that I'm a smartass.
I hate when people pretend that they still believe in Santa Claus. I have two sisters, one of which is like almost 20. She's like 24. She's like, oh yeah, I still believe in Santa Claus. No, you don't. I know that you don't believe in Santa Claus.
Oh,
That's just a big thing to do, actually.
that's too funny.
I don't believe in Santa Claus, but I do believe in ABC Family's 25 Days of Christmas, so it's kind of the same thing.
Oh, kind of. You know, half dozen one way, six another.
It's actually not even real anymore. Now it's Freeform's 25 Days of Christmas.
Goddamn liberal media. Okay, so the ethics of telling kids to believe in Santa Claus. So this is one of those things where, like, just, you know, on some level, I think that it kind of comes down to something Steve and I brought up just as a joke in our discussion on Jesus, which is it even ethical to have children? And, you know, as I move on to a particular phase of my life, I think this is an interesting question, and I think the ultimate answer kind of becomes probably not, but, like, whether or not it's ethical is certainly not going to stop you.
Well, so I like thinking of it in the terms of people do what they want. And so when you start thinking about all the little things you're trying to do to make the world a better place, like say you're vegan, or say you recycle, or say you use energy efficient bulbs, any one of these things that you do that build up a small amount of positive change in the world, a very minuscule but still sufficient positive change in the world, literally all of that goes away if you have a child. If you bring one more person to the world, even if they live the way you do, energy efficient and all that shit, they still negate everything you've done. It's not going to stop you from doing it. It's not going to stop you from having a kid either.
Yeah. So when we bring it back to the more narrow focus of, is it okay to, you know, like, really the question here, the underlying question is it okay to perpetuate a mass lie? Like, it's weird when you think about, like, the lengths to which our society goes to convince children that Santa Claus is real. It's not like a thing just a couple parents do, because if it was just a couple, like, small group of parents, it would be weird. But, like, it's this massive societal thing that we all do, to the point where, like, do they still do the announcement of, like, the Weather Channel picking up Santa on radar? Is that still a thing?
Yeah.
That's weird, right? Like, everybody's in on it's a conspiracy. The conspiracy theorists are, like, right about Santa Claus, but not the Earth being flat.
The government has a website that you can go on to track Santa's progress around the world via satellites. The fuck is wrong with this world?
That's the weird part. And that's the thing where I'm like, wow, we all really commit to this bit, don't we? Like,
We really do.
Like, and I think what it is the shame thing. Like, you gotta be a special kind of bastard to be the one to, like, look a kid dead in the eye and tell him Santa's not real. Speaking of which, favorite holiday traditions. That's number one for me. Like, I feel like the only reason that kids stop believing in Santa Claus is because they have older siblings who don't believe in Santa Claus and want to be cool and edgy and not, like, take part in the charade. And then, like, the kids have Santa Claus ruined for them in that way by their sibling, and then they go to school and they ruin it for their friends. I feel like that is the stages of disillusionment of the Santa Claus charade.
I mean, I think that's pretty accurate. Santa Claus is that weird thing where even if you want to believe and choose to believe, it's you can't unlearn that he's not true or not real. And the moment you accept that he is not real, your interaction with everyone else who still believes is fundamentally different. So you're either like me and Rosco, and you're in denial about it, or you ruin it for everybody else, and everyone becomes a cynical jackass for the rest of their life, and hence millennials.
man.
I'm not saying there are some good things about being a millennial, because there are, because we're destroying capitalism. But at the same time, we are cynical jackasses.
Oh, we're cynical jackasses selling our blood. Dear Santa, I would like
We sell
a
our
clean
blood, drink Chardonnay with Taco Bell.
Yeah, dear Santa, I would like a clean hypodermic needle so I can sell my blood more efficiently and safely.
All I want for Christmas is your plasma.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so what is it about the charade that's appealing then? Why does everyone else buy into it once they stop believing?
So, maybe this is too much of a generalization, not fair on the part of religion. But I think on a fundamental level, the reason we maintain the conspiracy of Santa is kind of the same reason we maintain a lot of religious mythology the way we do. Because the belief doesn't just tell you what's good or bad, what's right and wrong, but it has a particular aesthetic, has a particular social dynamic, has a particular cultural connotation. Believing in Santa isn't just a thing you do, it's a way you live, specifically when you're younger. And you can't break out of that very easily, even after you know he's not real. And so at that point, you either have to change the way you practice Christmas, or you just go with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not changing the way we practice Christmas.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because I feel like things become traditional, and I think things kind of come and go. Like, who still does the popcorn thing on trees? Really, you do the popcorn thing on trees?
It hurts like hell and it's annoying, but yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. I've never been to a house with the popcorn thing on trees. That's always just been a really retro thing that I've seen, in movies.
I'm not saying it's as popular as it was, but I still see a lot of people do it.
That's surprising. But no, things come and go. Why do people in America put up a Christmas tree when we didn't have, at any point in our history, a significant percentage of German immigrants living here enough to bring that tradition over, and the people that moved here were Puritans before the tree made its way to England? Well, it's because people saw the tree on the British royal family's Christmas card after one of the German royalty married into the British royal family. And they're like, oh man, we gotta be like the royals, and that spread throughout Britain, and then that made its way across the pond. These traditions kind of come and go, just culturally. So why then is just because everybody's in on Santa for a while, and then decides to perpetuate? Why does it still last? Santa's been around for a minute, man.
Well, okay, Santa's been around for a while, but Santa Claus has not. If we're thinking about Santa as a historical mythological figure in the literature and the history of Christmas, he's been around a long time. But we're talking about Coca-Cola Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that people believe in, and that's the aesthetic of Christmas that everyone operates in, and that's where all of this comes from. Coca-Cola Santa Claus is less than 100 years old.
True.
So I don't think we're away from that yet. However, I've noticed a lot of Christmas movies over the last few years have, even the kids' ones, have shied away from Santa and just started doing stuff about the Christmas aesthetic independent of Santa. So maybe that's starting to shift. I'm not a kid right now, so I don't know how kids engage with Santa, but I haven't, despite it being December, I haven't seen a kid excited about Santa Claus, and I run into a lot of kids just getting to work, so...
Well, here's a question I have. Where is the origin of, where can we first see, the origin of the idea of, some sort of magical person that brings gifts to kids on a specific day of the year? Because aren't there other countries where they don't have Santa Claus, but they have something, that is pretty much the equivalent of that? Because like where I feel like there's like a more like weird stripped down like origin of just like this weird concept of like a mythological figure that comes at night and gives gifts to kids.
I've heard like different versions of Santa.
Like Klaus.
Yeah, the one that like kidnaps naughty children and forces them to make toys for the good children. Which is by far, hands down, the most terrifying version of Santa Claus.
My favorite version of Santa Claus. You're either productive or you're not. Capitalism.
Capitalist Santa Claus. Ho, ho, ho! It's gonna be huge. Anyway, always gotta get our digs in. No, like, you're right, Rosco. They're kind of... That has been around, and, it's... A lot of the German fairy tales, I feel like, kind of connect back to that. Like, the notion of the old kindly man that gives gifts kind of goes back to a lot of, late, and not even late Middle Ages.
Chronicles of Narnia, that's where it's from.
Yeah, I'm thinking like 17 to early 1800s German fairy tales. And like, I haven't done research on this kind of stuff in a long time. I just, not even proper research. I just have heard things here and there. So don't take me as
Santa expert.
Yeah, don't take me as the Santa expert. Santa expert I am not. I don't know, man. It's one of those ideas that's like relatively new-ish, kind of, sort of. Depending on how you want to talk about mythology.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Well, and I mean, it's not hard to extrapolate that sort of caricature of a magical person coming in and bringing gifts to good children and punishing bad ones from just any idea of a god in general.
Mm-hmm.
Not that there aren't differences, because there are, but just in that really vague sense of, like, ultimately Santa's an ethics test.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really simple one, but it is one. There's actually a Hallmark movie that has a fantastic line that I'm never going to forget, where a woman's like, a person who believes in Santa Claus is fundamentally a good person. Which is hilarious and bullshit, but... There's a point to be made there about Santa is just as much a tool in a religious vein as he is anything else. And so I think, like, sort of the stuff that Santa does that's specific to him is always going to be subservient to that even older classical role of do this because I said it's good, don't do that because I said it was bad.
Mm-hmm. I got nothing for that, really. I don't. Like, the idea of... I guess I get, like, hung up on something. I don't want to distract too much from your point. But, like, we've all heard the atheists go... the new atheists go, like, oh, Santa Claus is the same thing as God. Like, Christians just don't think about it. And then they all kind of, like, just support each other and all this stuff.
Yeah.
No, you're being way too shallow there, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that it's like that it comes from, on some level, a similar place. How to put this?
Yeah.
Because, like, for as much as I don't like him, Dawkins does on occasion raise interesting points, and one of them is how interesting it is that 90% of religious people share the religion of their parents and of their geographic region. And, like, yeah, it's a really good point. So few people that are of faith seem to question their faith in regards to others, right? And so it is one of those things where there is some level of you kind of just go with what you're taught and what's impressed upon you when you're young. I guess the impression that you get when you stop believing in Santa Claus is that everybody's supposed to still act like he's a thing because you got enjoyment out of the idea of Santa Claus and other people deserve it too.
Yeah. And I guess that sort of comes back to the point that you alluded to at the beginning of this, which is for parents, there's a kind of utility to having Santa Claus around when it comes to dealing with children.
Mm.
And you don't want to say that's necessarily a bad thing, especially considering that none of us have kids, and I imagine having a kid would be really, really fucking annoying during Christmas if you didn't tell them about Santa. But yeah, that kind of like utility creates a bit of a problem in maintaining that conspiracy, and it's a tool insofar it's being used for something, and it's a lesson insofar as you outgrow it. And I don't see either of those things happening with Santa, at least yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a perfect thing. But it's one of those things where, like, is there any harm actually being done by people believing in Santa? Maybe that's the issue, is that it's an ethical consideration only after it does harm.
That's true. Like, you could probably, if you really, really cherry pick, you could probably find some cases of people, like, doing something violent because of their firmly held belief in Santa Claus.
Or, like, maybe, like, you could find that there's some link between, like, being taught that Santa is real as a child, and then later on in life being more, like, likely to believe in things that are not backed by any sort of, like, evidence or anything like that.
Yeah, sure. I could see stuff like that.
I don't know how you'd actually be able to find that, but, like, that is what that's what I would look to as, like, a negative effect of believing in Santa as a kid.
I guess my issue is just that, like, no matter how, unless you go to the cherry-picked extremes that are outliers anyway, the worst thing that could happen to a person from a long-lasting belief in Santa is that they just don't stop believing in Santa.
Yeah, like, there's no dogma associated with Santa Claus, right? Like, oh, you kind of, wasted some perfectly good cookies and a glass of milk. You're just like any other American.
Yeah, I mean, like, so engaging with someone that literally cannot tell the difference between, or literally is incapable of realizing Santa's not real, it only matters insofar as you engage them on it during Christmas, and then it's over.
Yeah.
Like, what it doesn't. And Roscoe, you're right. Like, there was like maybe some trends in gullibility. Maybe there was some trends in like trust issues or being too trusting. But whatever. Worst case scenario, you have Elf, right?
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah, you might just be a little bit too jolly, and that can, it's not a problem necessarily,
I can deal with Will Ferrell. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, like, just there are not significant enough negative consequences, I guess, is what we're getting at then. Because, like, the worst case scenario is got someone who's just tries to be really nice all year round for when Christmas comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they might be a little sad when they don't get any presents because they didn't buy anything because they thought Santa was going to do it for them.
Yeah, I mean, that could be, like, the extreme that happens, right? They thought Santa was coming, then when he doesn't, they go crazy and, like, burn down the apartment. What?
Yeah, maybe they
something
really
did that
after a while. But
something did that, and I cannot remember what it was. Something, like, took that take and had someone get really, really excited for Christmas and Santa and everything. And they were like a grown-ass man or some shit. And then Santa didn't come. And they got, like, really, like, psychotically pissed off. And, like, started, like... I don't know if they tried to, like, kill themselves or just something ridiculous like that. It was a really dark joke in a Christmas something or other. God, I can't remember.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. It was some kind of movie or something. He didn't come again every year. Okay, well, Rosco, this is your topic, so take us somewhere else on it then.
Ooh. Well, okay. Just leave me to figure out a way out of this place, this pocket of dead air. Okay.
Is that not very, very nice of me? Am I on the naughty list for throwing some weight at you to try to piece together now?
Yeah, you just threw me out of the plane with no parachute, and now I'm just falling.
Do you think that we have a socio-political crisis in the Middle East because Santa steals all the coal?
Yes. Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Definitely.
Solved it. Done. Boom.
Shoot down Santa Claus.
Seriously, invade the North Pole.
Or maybe if we have more Santa Clauses, then we'll have to find a new resource to produce energy, and we won't be able to use coal, and it will help the environment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I've got a question. So I'm an atheist. Rosco, you're an atheist, right?
Yeah.
Steve, you're an atheist. At least like Rosco and I were like raised in a Christian household. Steve, you were not.
I was not,
and
right.
You're not even religious within your own faith. In some possible future where you end up having a kid, do you plan to tell them about...
You make that sound so hypothetical.
Well, I don't know your life, Steve. I don't know your choices.
On Earth X, where you have a kid.
Well, like,
Steve might have a child.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like Steve...
Some alternate reality.
Yeah, I feel like Steve would have a really hard time having a child because, like, he'd be reviewing his baby mama during pregnancy and just like ruining it.
She
for
doesn't
her.
justify her existence.
Exactly. No, but like, okay, so real question though is like, okay, hypothetically, you have a kid. You're not part of the Christian faith in which Santa Claus is a celebration of Christmas, and you're also like not even a believer in any gods for that matter. Do you, in this hypothetical scenario, plan to raise your kid to believe in Santa?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Why the hell not? He's gonna be so bored in fucking American schools if he doesn't believe in Santa Claus. This gets to the aesthetic thing, right? Like I was not raised in anything remotely resembling Christianity, but we were living in America, and Christmas was just a thing, and you just embraced it on that level, including Santa Claus. And it just sort of assimilates you.
Mm-hmm. American culture kind of overwhelms, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, how about you, Rosco? You're a young, strapping lad. Should you have children, do you plan to raise them to believe in Santa?
I guess, it's like one of those things where I feel like at the point where they're old enough to ask if Santa is real, like, hey, is Santa real? I would say no. Like, I wouldn't lie to them.
So you would like have a firm cutoff point.
Yeah, like my thing is, sure, like when they're really young, you can like set them on the path to believing in Santa Claus, right? But once they're of the age where they begin to question whether or not Santa Claus is real, if they want to ask me, that's it. Like, it's done. No, he's not real. Right then.
So you just don't want to lie. Like, you're willing to play the act, but you're not willing to lie when it becomes a question then.
Well,
yeah.
Do you feel like, importantly, though, a kid's going to take for granted that Santa exists, and the moment they ask you if he does, they have already accepted he doesn't on some level.
See, you say that, but the thing is, I believed in Santa for a ridiculously long amount of time. Let's see here. 5th grade, I would have been 10 or 11. And at that point...
Yes,
yeah, at that point, I didn't, believe in Santa, but I was legit under the belief that there was a guy at one point... Santa was a dude at one point. He didn't go around the whole world, but there was a dude that Santa was based off of. Like, that was my belief. I was like,
You just held on. You held on tight.
I know, man. I did for a while. And now I'm like, nah, I mean, maybe there was some guy who gave toys to children, but he damn sure wasn't like, the level to which I thought of at that time.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like for me when I think about it, I'm kind of in a similar thing to Rosco. I'm like, I don't think I would like want to lie at that point, but I don't know. Situation may change.
Yeah.
Probably just end up being up to my wife.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't, even with my kid, like, I wouldn't encourage it past that question, but I'm not going to do anything to hinder that belief if that's what they want.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's an interesting scenario.
What if they want the truth?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's weird that, Christmas is such an overwhelming holiday that atheists celebrate it. Like, I remember for a while there's like this whole thing like, oh no, we don't celebrate Christmas, we celebrate Newtonmas, because Newton was actually born on December 25th, unlike Jesus, and then you'd get like a whole fucking lecture about how Jesus wasn't actually born on
if a guy came up to me and said that, I would punch them in the face.
I remember that being a thing, and I remember like making a joke about it at one point. I was just like, goddamn, it's like, you can't even just admit that Christmas is king of the holiday. Like I remember when I was in middle school, I was like, I kind of feel bad for Jewish people because, Hanukkah's right around the same time. But, like, what Hanukkah specials do you see on television? What Hanukkah movies are made? And, like, a kid at my middle school who was Jewish was like, what the fuck are you talking about Jewish people for? I'm like, I was just talking about the lack of representation in media. Didn't say it like that because I wasn't that smart. And he's like, oh. Okay. He was ready for a fight on this one. It was kind of funny.
I mean, I don't blame him, but still.
Yeah, in retrospect, he was ready to start brawling. And yes, people in the comments, I know about 8 Crazy Nights. I am aware of the film 8 Crazy Nights.
But if literally all of you thought of 8 Crazy Nights at the same time, you've just proved the point.
Yeah, exactly. 8 Crazy Nights and the Hebrew Hammer. There you go. Think of something else now.
The Hebrew Hammer is really funny, though.
Exactly. So yeah, it's this idea of like, do you allow the overwhelming force of Christmas to continue to infect another generation, even though you don't participate or believe in the things behind the holiday necessarily? And I'm like, yeah, I feel like Christmas is kind of an eternal thing, wherein, to the whole atheist point, it's like, okay, it's already the Catholic Church, adopting some pagan traditions to try to appeal to pagans. And so, can't other people of other, religious backgrounds co-opt Christmas traditions to just be part of their own tradition without connecting it to the religion itself?
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that, like, Christmas itself is such an amalgam of religious traditions and non-Christian traditions that it almost doesn't matter. Yeah. Like, the way we celebrate Christmas now is almost certainly not what Christianity would want it to be 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's also maybe has something to do with the fact that people like living with other people that are in the spirit to be a little bit more chipper than they would at any other time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it's maybe a little bit more of a functional thing where it's like, oh, it's Christmas time. And, because Christmas is has so much of its own iconography that's like separate from a lot of religious iconography, it almost becomes this thing where it's kind of like inoffensively vanilla. So everyone just kind of chips in and kind of takes part just because we all kind of like it when everybody else is not out to be an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it just kind of does. So it's almost like a community building thing.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I definitely, despite myself, I definitely do get into like a more generous spirit around the Christmas season, and I get like a little more wrapped up in it than than I even would be willing to admit to a couple years ago. Like, I've made... for some reason, I get really creatively energized around Christmas. Like, last year I made that Larfleeze motion comic. Because I'm just like, man, it's a really good Christmas story, and I really got a good take on like, how this should be represented with the whole Christmas atmosphere thing. And then I just got into it. But, like, the funny thing is, I did the exact same thing with another motion comic, like, years earlier. Like, you know, you kind of can't help yourself. You kind of get roped into it, and I guess that kind of goes back to the topic at hand. It's not necessarily that it is probably just objectively unethical to teach kids about Santa Claus, but you get so wrapped up in the spirit in the moment of it all that you kind of, you know, don't care and want to do it anyway, because it's like a magic trick. Even though you know it's not true, the look of wonder, the fun and experience that it gives others is, like, kind of worth the ethical ambiguity.
And I mean, you're basically just hurting more people by discouraging it than you are by encouraging it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, worst case scenario of the Santa example is you have Elf, and on the other end of the spectrum, if you're the guy that wants to be an asshole and talk about how Santa's not real, you don't encourage it at all, then you just kind of sap the fun out of everyone's life for about a month.
Yeah, you're not a Scrooge, you're not a Grinch, you're just kind of a dick.
Yeah. It's like, if our choice is being a dick or being Will Ferrell...
You know what? I think maybe the reason I'm more up on Christmas the last year or two is because I'm not working retail anymore.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, and when you don't have to hear the music like your entire workday, that really helps. That really fucking helps. You have no idea.
That's fair.
Like, you know, when you're not feeling forced into the quote unquote spirit, I feel it really helps, and it gives you a different perspective on things. So, I don't know, maybe a nice thing to do if you're really in the Christmas spirit is when you walk into a retail store, just find a manager and ask them if they can change the radio station to something not Christmas. Even for, like, just spend like an hour in the store and make sure to buy something so they actually feel that was worth doing for you. And then all the employees will be really happy that you came.
For at least an hour.
Yeah, I mean, just like an hour, you know, like, people work, you know, usually, Steve being the exception here, usually people don't work more than 8 hours, especially if we're talking retail. People don't work more than 8 hours, even at Christmas time. So, I mean, if you can break up an eighth of their day, that's not bad.
No, not bad at all.
That's a good Christmas gift.
Give the Christmas gift of 1/8 of less misery in a capitalist society.
Right. So, I don't know, it's hard to talk about this whole ethics thing. So, okay. So we've talked about this in the very narrow sense of Santa Claus, but this is, of course, Geeky Gentleman Holiday Month, which brings up the more general question, and it's you know, it's apt that we're doing this episode, you know, right after History Month, and, you know, Thanksgiving is the reason we do History Month, because it's the holiday of lies. Kind of all holidays have a bullshit to them.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, I cannot remember the comedian, but there's this great bit on Easter. It was like, okay, well, Jesus was dead for 3 days, and then he was risen, and so a giant bunny hides eggs, and we find them. And that's like, Easter's a really weird holiday in the way in which we celebrate it. You know, we talked about, again, Thanksgiving is complete bullshit. But at the same time, forcing people to get together with their families to sit down and stuff their faces full of food and just say thank you to each other for being, not shit for an hour, that's a generally good thing.
Yeah.
So let's broaden out the ethics of Santa Claus in particular and talk about the ethics of lying for the excuses of holidays.
Well, so there's a myth aspect and there's a ritual aspect, right? So like the actual rituals that we get caught up in during our bullshit holidays are not the problem. It's the myth that gets surrounded with the ritualistic practice. So Thanksgiving is not the problem. It's teaching people Thanksgiving on the terms of Native Americans and Pilgrims sat down and had dinner together and were thankful. Because that's not what happened, and you shouldn't think that's what's happening. In a lot of ways, it's the same sort of thing with Christmas of like, you don't want to talk about it on biblical terms if you're a Christian because it's kind of not, and you don't want to talk about it in non-Christian terms if you're an atheist because that's also not entirely fair. You just kind of want to
sit down and open a goddamn present.
Yeah, you want to cut down a tree and light it up and have gifts and shit like that, and that's all fine and good and fun. Just don't, get absorbed in the lies and justify why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the Easter Bunny. Fuck the Easter Bunny. Doesn't make any fucking sense.
But hiding eggs...
Fuck the Easter Bunny!
Yeah, but hiding eggs from children and watching them run around trying to find them, that's fun.
Yeah. I have no problems with a bunch of little kids running around a garden trying to find eggs with candy in them.
You know what I think we should do? We should start a movement to just, pick a better animal for Easter. Since it already has, so little to do with the religious, day of significance, let's just go ahead and change it.
What's wrong with the Easter Bunny?
I'm just saying there's cooler animals out there, literally anything, like a badger.
The Easter badger.
The Easter badger. That's awesome.
My vote is for the Easter platypus.
The Easter platypus. That's another. See, literally, you can't suggest a worse animal. Or a better animal. There's only better animals, dude.
I want an Easter sloth.
The Easter sloth.
Yes.
No, it'll take too long for it to hide the eggs. The kids will get up and it'll still be at work.
I have a bad choice, but apparently not.
I don't know, I guess if we're gonna get really nitpicky, you should pick an animal that forages. So, the Easter squirrel would make a little bit of sense.
But squirrels are assholes.
Yeah, but they hide their food, so,
But they're assholes. A bunny's
the Easter elephant.
Well, it would, you could work it into the narrative with the squirrel, because the Easter squirrel's a dick, and that's why we want to steal its food.
But that makes you a dick.
No, because it stole the food from your fridge, right? Right? See? Bam. Science.
What?
Yeah, if it's the Easter elephant and all of the eggs, it'll just be peanuts inside of all of the Easter eggs, and all the kids. You may be asking well, what about the kids with peanut allergies? And that's the whole point, is it's going to be used to wipe out the people who have peanut allergies.
Gee, Rosco, thanks.
That's dark.
Easter genocide.
Dude, I have peanut allergies. Fuck you.
Ian would not survive. Oh no.
No, the traditions surrounding holidays. It's so weird when you want to talk about these things and people go, "Oh, shut up. Quit trying to ruin it for me." I'm like, "No, I don't care if you celebrate this thing. I just want us all to collectively agree that the things that we celebrate are not the things that we say we're celebrating." And then just if we could all just admit that and move along, that would be great.
If we can cut the bullshit and do what we feel like doing, the world will be a lot better place.
Yeah, I agree. I'm reminded of the episode of Boondocks. It's Christmas, Huey Freeman, where Granddad's watching the Peanuts Christmas special, and it's like, and that's what Christmas is all about, boy. And Huey's just like, no, actually, Granddad, Christmas is a pagan holiday celebrated by the Roman Church. It was banned in 1893. And he goes through Like, the entire history of Christmas is Granddad just tunes him out. He's like, but it was boring, Huey. Like, I feel like that guy when I want to talk about this kind of stuff, because I find this kind of stuff interesting.
Well, and also, to kind of throw in with that history thing, Christmas Carol, right? Yeah. So there's a biopic that came out about Charles Dickens, and it's got the best title ever for this particular topic, and one that I think is really true. It's called The Man Who Invented Christmas, because Christmas, in a lot of ways that we understand and culturally what it means and what it's done and why it's as big as it is basically because of the Christmas Carol.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like when we even talk about like Christmas and ritualism and all that kind of thing, Christmas stopped being about anything except the Christmas Carol style after the Christmas Carol came out. So I feel like there's a lot of like growing pains with Christmas right now. Like, it's not as old as we think it is.
Which is weird, because like, you think Christmas and you think it goes back forever. And
yeah,
again,
absolutely.
in a number of ways it does, just under different names and kind of all amalgamized. I guess the interesting thing about, you know, the way in which we kind of perpetuate, like, okay, so it's weird because we talk about this like, oh, well, there's no negative effects to, you know, teaching or telling kids to believe in Santa. What do you want to bet that there are, and we just haven't thought of or realized them? In the same way that there are negative effects to, you know, teaching people that the Pilgrims and the Indians sat down and that's why we celebrate Thanksgiving. Like I feel like that's the impression that people have when they talk about this stuff, is like, oh, well, we don't need to talk about the real truth behind Thanksgiving being bullshit, because at the end of the day, if people believe that this is what happened, then it's, you know, just better.
Yeah.
So, like, the premise of, is it ethical to lie to children, we're kind of on two minds about, because we're like, yeah, you can keep the traditions, we just want to, like, get rid of the context behind them, but part of why it's become a tradition is because of the context that's, the falsified context behind them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, that's why I say, don't lie. If you're asked, just don't lie about it. And I mean, like, yeah, like that's kind of, if you're using Christmas as a way to make your job as a parent easier, so, and like you're prolonging it actively for that gain, then probably there are some negative effects. Because at that point, like, you're kind of reinforcing an idea that sometimes the answer is to just keep people ignorant for their own good, which I don't know, maybe some people would agree that that's a good thing, but I typically I'm not on that side.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's a complicated fucking field of thought in surprising ways. Because it was funny, I was talking to Deadpool Zilla just before we started recording tonight, and I told him the topic, and he's like, really? You're gonna get a whole fucking episode out of that? I'm like, you know, it's more complex than you would think. Because, like, I talked to a couple people that I work with who have kids, and I'm like, so do you think it's okay to tell your kids about Santa and all that stuff? And they're like, oh yeah, lie to my children all the time. And, like, Denise, I love her to death, she goes, yeah, you know, when my kids were little, it doesn't work anymore, but when my kids were little, I'd walk into their room, I'd put my hands on my eyes, and then I'd put my hands on the walls, and put my hands on my ears, and then I'd put my hands on the walls, and I said, I got eyes and ears in here. I can see and hear everything that you're doing in your room. And they believed me.
Oh, fuck. That's a bit far.
Well, they were acting like idiots in their rooms, apparently, and doing that made them behave better, so fuck it.
Yeah, I mean, kids are idiots.
Yeah, like, you could just tell them anything. You can tell them, like, you know, whatever you want, and they'll believe you. And so, I guess the question becomes, like, who decides, like, when it's for the greater good to tell them these things, like Santa exists?
No, I mean, a lot of that kind of stuff you can always just kind of put down to particular situations and what those extremes are in those particular situations. Like I mean, I think the abuses of power in those situations are a lot more clear than doing it correctly, just because so much of it is just normal functioning human activity.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I ain't got anything for that. I agree with you, Steve.
So, I guess the other thing is, there's a sizable sect of Christianity that wants to say Santa's a false idol and that you shouldn't celebrate him.
And that'll be interesting because I know what I'm picking for next week already, and we'll get into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say about that. I just wanted to bring it up and see if someone had anything on it that I don't.
I mean, it was funny.
I mean, fair enough for them. I'm not saying they're wrong, but Santa's not the battle here, I don't think.
Yeah. Huh.
When it comes to, like, religious identity and shit, Santa Claus is not the hill you want to die on.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I liked some of what South Park did to kind of mock the fact that Santa has taken over the holiday. Like, do you remember that episode from, like, what would have been their first, like, 2 or 3 seasons, where Santa Claus and Jesus had a fight?
Yes. Hell yes.
And
it's one of their best episodes.
Yeah, that was, like, really funny. I don't know, I think Santa's kind of taken over the holiday in a way. Santa's bigger than Jesus.
See, that makes me wonder whether we should call it Christmas or, like, something to do more with Santa.
Santa.
Clausmas.
Yeah.
Klausmas.
Klausmas. I like
or
Klausmas.
I don't know. The Santa night. But spelled with a K. It sounds badass that way. Santa.
It does sound badass.
You just need to read Klaus Rosco. You'll love Klaus.
You need to read about the Jingle Bells of Freedom. That's literally what Grant Morrison calls it, the Jingle Bells of Freedom.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing.
Next issue that's coming out this week.
Yep. It's Santa Claus versus Santa Claus.
Yes, the best. Okay. We unfortunately need to fill some more time, and I just don't know what to talk about in regards to this. We talked about if we're going to, like, teach our kids about Santa. Should we have them?
So, okay. When it comes to us as parents telling our kids about Santa, that's one thing. But then, I don't know your experiences in public schools, but elementary school, the schools and the teachers really hammer in the Santa thing for the kids. Mm-hmm. And that's partly because to make the elementary school teachers' job easier. If they just get them all distracted with threatening them by talking about Santa.
Yeah. I honestly, it's so weird you bring that up. I honestly cannot remember how Santa Claus was handled or addressed at all when I was in elementary school. Like, I can't remember anything about that.
I remember we used to have stockings in elementary school, and like,
yeah, like we had stuff like kind of like Christmassy themed stuff, but I don't know if like the teachers were specifically like told never even possibly get into a situation where Santa Claus and the believability of his existence could possibly be called into question. Like, I don't know what they were told because I can't remember what I was told about.
Honestly, there probably is a legal thing here and there where they just can't do it anymore, but yeah. I definitely remember being a kid and, like, if someone was acting up, the teacher would be like, do you want me to call Santa?
See, I never had anything like that. I never had anything like that. I remember, like, we'd talk about, Christmas is coming, that means Santa, or we're getting pictures, Santa's visiting the school to get pictures, but I never had, like, teachers threaten me with Santa Claus.
Oh, they did it all the time. It was hilarious.
That's amazing. Oh, wow. Okay, I thought of something else we can talk about with this, though. Is it weird that, like... Alright, generally speaking, a lot of Christmas movies are family movies, right?
Yeah.
Is it weird that a lot of Christmas movies deal with whether or not Santa Claus exists and usually stars someone who's very recognizable outside of this movie that plays Santa Claus? Is that weird? Like, I'm thinking specifically of the movie The Santa Claus.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Where, like, literally the kid is having adults make the argument to him that Santa Claus does not exist. And I'm just like, you know, thinking back on it, I remember watching that as a kid, and, like, that probably contributed in some way, shape, or form to me not believing in Santa Claus or having my doubts, you know?
Yeah.
Like, is it weird that we seem to put the idea into kids' heads that Santa Claus is not real, or are we like emotionally preparing them to confront people that tell them Santa Claus is not real?
But the Santa Claus is also just a really weird movie with a lot of problems, so I wonder if that's an outlier in the whole believability of Santa thing. Because every time I see that handle, it's usually in a tongue-in-cheek way where it's still dumb enough to be... It's still dumb enough to say that clearly you shouldn't believe in Santa Claus, and it's just funny if you did.
Yeah, I'm also thinking of my mother's favorite Christmas movie, which is Miracle on 34th Street, which is all about whether or not Santa Claus is real. Like,
yeah, they put Santa on trial and shit in that one.
Yeah, I love that one. That is so fucking cool.
Yeah, no, I like that movie a lot too. Yeah, well, then my favorite Christmas movie is It's a Wonderful Life, and that has to do with angels and shit. So
yeah,
there's certainly a level of divine, Christmassy, spirity intervention.
Mm-hmm. It's a weird thing where I'm like, yeah, well, what would they call it because it is almost cultish, isn't it?
Yeah.
What would you call that when, like, someone confronts you and they give you, like, a stock answer to give? Like, I remember watching, what was the documentary? Jesus Camp? Where it was, like, kids being sent off to, like, Baptist camp, and they were, like, being given all this information and basically just arguments to go to as they go through their lives and have crises of faith kind of stuff. And, like, one of them was all about dinosaurs, and this guy's basically saying, say you weren't there, you don't know, the Bible was written in those times, so it's a better source than you. And so, like, when we have kids in movies told that Santa Claus is not real, and they kind of, like, come back with this perfect argument, or they get some kind of justification at the end that he is real. Are we just doing the same thing but on a much smaller scale? I don't know. It's a weird idea. Again, this kind of gets to the lavish degrees of the Santa conspiracy.
And at this point, I think we've concluded that it is at least a conspiracy.
Oh, I agree. It has to be. You know, it's just so over the top. The number of lengths we go to is ridiculous. Just so a kid can smile. Kids will smile for anything. You make a noise and kids will smile. Come on the fuck on.
Seriously. It kind of makes you wonder what's actually happening.
Right? Oh. Okay, well, I don't have anything else. Rosco, do you have anything else you want to talk about with this?
Not really.
Okay. It's just going to be a shorter episode. That's all right. Alright, so I initially started this episode with a different idea in mind for what I was going to pick, and then I remembered something that I read forever ago, and I changed my mind, and we're going to review that, and I don't know how this is going to go, but we're going to try it. So we're going to review a short story that came out a number of years ago, and it's called Homeless in Hell. It's by Orson Scott Card. It's just a short story. Orson Scott Card, isn't he the bigot guy?
Yes, he's Ender's Game guy that is a homophobe.
Oh shit, fuck it. Oh well. We're going to be reviewing that. It's
What did you
just
say it was called?
Homeless in Hell.
Homeless in Hell.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just gonna write it down.
Yeah. From what I remember, there is no bigotry in this, so it's got that going for it.
And this is a Christmas story?
Yeah, Homeless in Hell, a Christmas story.
It's exciting.
Yeah. I just remember reading this forever ago. I'm like, oh well, okay, whatever works. I got a link to it online if you want to use this. This website's text formatting doesn't look very good though.
Sure. Whatever's easier.
Yeah. All right. So that'll be linked in the description in the next episode. Everyone, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the Exile.
And I'm the beta male cuck.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!
Literally, did we lose Steve? We always lose Steve in the middle of a sentence.
What a cliffhanger. Dude, what a cliffhanger.
I know, right? Edge of my seat right now.
No one will ever know.
Now, he's usually able to come back. His laptop just like randomly fails on him, and he has to restart it. So we'll just keep recording and just wait for him to come back.
All right, back to peanuts and Easter. Okay, I'm just kidding. No, yeah. Where do we go from here?
We'll just wait till Steve's back to start up again, because I want to hear what he was going to say about that.
So wait, you really are allergic to peanuts? You never had peanut butter?
Okay, I really am allergic to peanuts. I had peanut butter when I was a very young child.
Okay. Did you enjoy it, even though you probably had a reaction?
I mean, I've like had it by accident a number of times. A lot of times it'll be like in something and they don't tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, like I don't really care for the texture, but I know there's apparently other textures of peanut butter out there. like creamy or chunky or something.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a story. Friend David dated this girl in high school. Her name was Mandy, and she was aware I was allergic to peanuts and all nuts for that matter. She was aware of this for a very long time. She dated David for like over a year, and she was aware of it the entire year. Then one day, we're all just hanging out at David's house. He's playing a game, and she like looks over at me from across the room and goes, "Ian, you've never had a PB&J." And I'm like, "Yeah? Oh my god. You don't know what you're missing out on. They're so good." I'm like, "Mandy, I would die." She's like, it'd be worth it. I don't care what would happen to me. I'd eat a PB&J. I'm like, what if I told you cyanide tasted delicious? I don't know what that is, but I'd try it. I was like, my god, it's a good thing.
All right. Well, boy, do I have an explanation for that for you.
Right?
Cyanide is this.
Right? Like, just that woman. It was a good thing she was pretty. She was pretty dense. What was the other one? Like, just
She was pretty alright. Pretty dense.
yeah.
Yes, me.
Like, she just every time there was something with her. Like, okay, she was opening a box with a knife, and like she had the box in front of her, and she took the knife from the far end of the package toward her. Right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And I say, "Mandy, you never pull a knife towards you," and she just goes, "I do." I'm like, it's, and I had to look at her and go, "It's not a challenge. It's a piece of advice to help make sure you don't hurt yourself." And then the other one is the exact same attitude. Those like frozen dinner meals, those things that you get in grocery stores. Yeah. She cooked one in the microwave and started complaining that it was frozen in the middle still. I was like, "That's why you never cook those in the microwave." And she goes, "I do." I'm like, again, it's not a challenge. I'm trying to help you here.
God.
Yeah, some people, man. Some people's children.